will go every month, every year, every year, every year till menopause. It means the restarting of this prophase, is it happening at the same time at the puberty? No. It is happening in a specific way. So some of the follicles are coded and they are timed for the first cycle, some are kept for the second cycle, some are kept for the third cycle. So bit tarteeb, follicles have a genetic message that you will start in the first cycle, you will start in the second cycle, you will start in the third cycle, you will go in the fourth cycle, you will go in the fifth cycle, like this. Did you get that? Okay, so it means this genetic switching, this timing is stored inside the follicles. This is what we speculate actually. Okay, so all the follicles don't start again at the same time. Okay, they are kept, they are waiting for their time, they are waiting for their turn. Okay, so some of the follicles which started in the fetal life, they started in the fetal life, the prophase, isn't it? They will finish their first meiotic division maybe at the age of Arba'in, maybe age of Khamsa Arba'in, maybe age of Khamseen really, if the menopause is not there, isn't it? So it means they will wait for takriban how many years? 45 or 50 years, okay? Some will have to wait for the 12-year times, some will have to wait for 13, 14, 15 years time, and likewise some will have to wait for 45 or 50 years. Are you getting the message? Okay? How are the follicles distributed really? Okay? Yeah.
Well, every month,
yeah,
numerous number of follicles will have their time.
Yes.
Of growth.
Yeah. 5 to 6 from this ovary, 5 to 6, 10 from this ovary, they start at the same time.
And which one is matured, it's go to the uterus.
And out of these 5 to 6 from here, 5 to 6 from here, takriban, okay? 10 to 15 total, majmua is 10 to 15. Out of these 15, they are running race actually. One will win the race and others will die, okay? Wahid only. Maybe from this ovary, Wahid, maybe from this ovary. One has to grow, one has to ovulate, others will run in the race but they will die, okay? All right. Now I said from the fetal life 6 to 7 million cells were present in 2 ovaries, okay? At the time of birth, if you see the number, you see, oh, what happened? It is not 6 to 7 millions I was expecting because they were there. Well, many of them, they died, okay, during the process because they are so many, kathir in number, that even if they die, their number is like unbelievable still, okay? It's a big, big reserve really, okay? Now you tell me one point. If every month, takriban 15 follicles, 15 primordial follicles on an average, if you take from both ovaries, they are growing for every month, and the female has a cycle of like 35 years or between 35 to 40 years, what will be the total number of follicles which is actually used by the ovaries? Takriban khamsa miya, not more than khamsa miya, if you see. 15 in one cycle. Imagine how many months are there in 35 years or 40 years, okay? If you multiply, how many months are there? You can easily calculate 12 multiplied by 35, okay? So how many, first of all?
6,000.
Okay, if you multiply it. So how many follicles are actually used? Okay, but how many follicles will actually ovulate? No, they're two different things, okay? How many are used? Total number. 10 to 15 in every cycle. And out of that, only one will ovulate, okay? So how many cycles are there, takriban? Up 500 cycles or so, isn't it? 400 to 500 or between 400 and 600, depends on the time of the female really, okay? So maximum 500 or 600 ovulations will happen, not more than that really, okay? It is the number which is coming for the ovulations, isn't it? How many ovulations will happen?
From 400 to 500.
From 400 to 500, maybe a little less, maybe a little more, but this is the figure, around khamsa miya you can imagine, isn't it? And the number of ova which are, number of the follicles which are used up Every cycle 10 to 15 takriban. You multiply that by the same number of months, total months, okay? Yeah, few thousands only really, isn't it? So let us see now, go back, that how many follicles are there as the reserves. At the time of puberty, takriban 300,000 are majood in the two ovaries. 300,000 are there. Out of 300,000, how many do you need? 5 to 6, less than 10,000 really, okay? Not more than 10,000 at any cost, total, okay? The rest of the follicles are only supportive and standby. So they are waiting for their turn and they will die. As the female grows, follicles are dying and dying and dying, but that doesn't have any problem. 300,000 is a big number. You only need less than 10,000 for a female, isn't it? And out of that, only like 400 or 500 will have ovulation process. Okay? So the concept is clear now. We have a safety margin, a big safety margin, very high number. Out of that, only little are used, about 10,000, less than 10,000 are used, and out of those, only 500 or so will ovulate. Okay? So keep everything in mind. You are starting from millions and you are coming in hundreds of thousands, and out of those hundreds of thousands, you are using only less than 10,000, and out of those 10,000, you are actually requiring only 500 for the purpose of the fertility in the female life. That is it. So just connect the sequence. Are you getting this point? Okay, clear. That's great. Okay? This is what we have to learn really, what happens. Very quickly, I am not going into the histological details basically. Have you done the phases of growth in the histology or in embryology? You haven't in the cycle. Not before? Not even before? At the time of foundation module or so? Embryology. Okay. But I think we need a recall at this time. Okay. So it will give a brush up to our memories very quickly. Okay. Now, we are starting from the time of like puberty, because we are starting the ovarian cycle discussion. Ovarian cycle will start at the puberty. There is no concept of the cycle before the puberty. Okay? At the time of puberty, the first cycle starts, and then you have subsequent cycles. One more point about the cycles. The first few cycles in the female, when she's starting, the system is just started. And the last few cycles, they are kind of irregular, very irregular, because the system is now starting and maintaining itself. Okay, it has to continue for a long time. So first few cycles, it's not lazim. Maybe it's a failure of ovulation. Ovulation does not happen properly. Okay, the deafened follicle tries to ovulate, it ruptures, and maybe ovum is not released. Okay, maybe ovum remains inside. So the cycle is there, but the cycle may not give you the ovum, not the release of ovum. Some cycles are a failure. If there is no release of ovum, is there a chance of fertility? No. Okay. If you assume there is no chance of fertility. So in the first few cycles, maybe for 1 year or maybe for less than 1 year or so, like this time, the cycles are not definite really. Okay. Their time is different sometimes, and they are not proper in terms of ovulation. Plus minus, mumkin ovulation can happen, mumkin it does not happen. There is no guarantee usually. Okay? When the ovulation does not happen in a cycle, you will call it an ovulatory cycle. What do you call it? An ovulatory cycle without ovulation. If a cycle is a regular normal cycle and it is giving you ovulation, you will call it, oh, perfect, successful cycle, ovulatory cycle. Okay? So some cycles in the beginning are an ovulatory cycle. And when the female is passing the life and now she is going to the menopause, last few years, maybe 1 or 2 years, again it is disturbed. This is because now system is going, it's trying to switch off. So the cycles can again become an ovulatory cycle. Okay, it may happen somewhere in the middle also, but usually the middle part is okay. Okay, very beginning and the end of the reproductive phase is giving you what? The anovulatory cycle. Okay, all right. Now please have a look. Primordial follicle. At the puberty, imagine one follicle. flat cells are there, okay, which are the flat granulosa cells, okay. At the time of puberty, when the follicles start, okay, and they're stimulated, the first thing which happens is that they become kind of cuboidal cells. The cells become better in shape and size, okay. They were flattened cells and they turn into, okay, for the first stimulus, the shape of the cell changes, but still there is a single layer of cells, okay. Now the functional changes will start and the receptors will start appearing, because these cells have to become responsive for the hormones, so the receptors will start appearing, okay. Before that they were silent and they were flat cells, okay. Many local factors and hormones are responsible. I am not asking you to remember all those factors. They are the growth factors, and there are some hormones which are causing the growth. So it's not really important for you to remember each and everything, okay. It's given in the diagram, but the main concept is that local factors and some systemic hormones, hormonal factors, they are stimulating the growth of the cells, okay. Now if I go back to the stage here, please have a look. I'm going to this diagram again. Have a look at this diagram, okay. This is the primordial follicle we are starting with, okay, and as it changes, first stimulation turns it into cuboidal cells, and the name also changes. It turns into, now stimulation has started, primary follicle, okay. So you have started the journey here. Still one single layer and you call it primary. Then you will have starting of division of the cells, and multiple layers are now developing. So primary changes into secondary, okay. There may be some intermediate stages also really, okay, which are not shown, okay. Imagine the antral stage as a reference point. Some stages are present before the antral and some are after the antral, okay. Pre-antral and post-antral. You can call these as the post-antral, and you can call these as the pre-antral because they are modued before that. Antral follicle is a very specific. Now you are growing here, the cells are dividing here in this one, and the cells, these cells are now called the granulosa cells in the primary follicle, okay. The name is, now the true status of granulosa cell is there. Now the granulosa cells divide here, division of the granulosa cells, and they divide into multiple layers, and now there is a differentiation. They are now differentiating into two types of cells, granulosa cells, theca interna and theca externa cells. The inner cell layers will form a specific zone called the theca interna, inner side, and the outer, in the same cells, the outer few layers will form another specific zone, and that's called the theca externa. So from granulosa cells, after division, you are getting two zones, theca interna and theca externa. Theca interna and externa, more and more divisions are coming. Now here theca interna and externa both are present. In the antral stage, now what will happen? Some specific cavities will start, fluid filled cavities will appear in the follicle, and these cavities, this is antrum, okay. When these cavities are formed and they fuse together to form a large cavity, this cavity here will give you a name which is called antrum, okay, a space in which the fluid is filled, okay. Before that, in the secondary follicle, you don't see the antrum or the antral cavities, but in a stage, once it is visible that you can see spaces, oh, now fluid is modued between, areas of fluid are there. First these are separate, then they fuse with each other like this and become one big area. So antral follicle is developed from here. Theca interna cells are very richly vascular, okay. Still you have got the cells here just around the ovum, okay, or the oocyte. You have the granulosa cells, and the outer layers are now dividing into theca interna and externa. So you still retain the name of granulosa cells and theca interna and externa cells like this, okay. Theca interna is very richly supplied by the blood, the capillaries, okay, very good blood flow. Theca externa has less blood flow. As the follicle grows, it turns into a mature or a big antral follicle, okay. Now antral follicle has started, now it will become bigger and bigger, and one big cavity is formed. This cavity is called truly the follicular antrum, filled with a very special fluid, and this fluid is rich in growth factors and hormones, okay? This is very, very important fluid, because in this fluid you have the secretion of many growth factors and hormones. Which hormones? Well, the hormones which are secreted by the theca interna cells and the granulosa cells. These hormones are specifically which we require from the female. What are these hormones? Estrogen and progesterone, okay? Now at this time, don't expect progesterone because this is very early. What will you expect? Estrogen. And you also have some metabolites of estrogen, and you also have some precursors from which estrogens are formed. What are the precursors from which estrogens form? Yeah, not the cholesterol really, but any hormone, other hormone. Yes, androgens also. Remember the androgens, androstenedione and DHEA. So some amount and a good amount of estrogen. As the follicle is growing, okay, these follicles, shabab, these follicles are stimulated by the hormones, external hormones, isn't it? Okay, and they are growing because they need some stimulation. What is the stimulus for the growth of these follicles? FSH. The main stimulus is FSH, which is coming from the pituitary. It means at this point of time, you must expect the receptors of the FSH which are appearing. And as you go on, the receptors, what will happen to the receptors? Increasing in number, upregulation of receptors, increasing. On every cell, the population of receptors is increasing and the cell is becoming more sensitive. Cells become larger, functional, and they divide more. And as you go on, this process is there. As these cells are dividing and growing, they are secreting, these cells, theca interna and granulosa cells, are secreting estrogens. Okay? Now, these estrogens have a very specific function. The estrogen is moujud in the fluid. First, it is in the fluid. From the fluid, the estrogens will go where? What is the fate of estrogens? Will they stay here? Where do they have to go? They have to be secreted. Where? Blood. Okay, capillaries are moujud, so they will enter into the bloodstream. From the blood, they are in the general circulation, so the levels of the estrogen will slowly start increasing as the follicles are developing. Where is the estrogen coming from? From the same follicles, from the follicular fluid. Okay. Now, one more thing, a very interesting thing. This estrogen which is secreted into the bloodstream will definitely go and start its job in the body. Now estrogen is moujud in the blood, so it will go to different organ systems and it will do the job, the work. Okay, it will be working on the uterus, it will be working on the other organs for metabolism, it will be working on all the structures, and this estrogen will also have a feedback control, isn't it? It will express some kind of a feedback. But what about this feedback? A normal type of feedback. Will it be a negative feedback or a positive feedback? It has to be negative, okay? You have to think about the negative feedback of the estrogen. So it means the estrogen which is coming in the blood, it is doing all the normal jobs in the body. What is the local function of the estrogen here, okay? Estrogen is doing some wonderful job locally also. It is going in the system, okay. But at the same time, this estrogen is having a local effect. Well, it is moujud in the fluid, it is around the cells, it is diffusing into the cells, here theca interna cells, okay. It is stimulating the division of the cells, it is causing the cells to grow functionally and to perform functions, and it is doing a very important job, please. It is increasing the receptors of FSH, okay. FSH is causing estrogen formation and release of estrogen. Estrogen is increasing the FSH receptors. More FSH receptors, more estrogen. More estrogen, more FSH receptors. Oh yes, so there is a local positive feedback. This is the first feedback which is happening in the ovaries, a positive feedback between the FSH and estrogen. FSH, estrogen, they are helping each other. They are helping each other. And in the akhir part of the follicle growth, before the ovulation, this feedback of estrogen is also increasing the receptors of LH, because now it is the time of LH also, qabl ovulation, 1 or 2 days before ovulation or so, or few days before. Now you need LH, you are preparing for the ovulation. So LH receptors also start increasing. So estrogen is doing a wonderful job locally, and estrogen is doing a perfect job in the system also. In the system, it is doing the normal negative feedback. In the local ovarian follicle, it is trying and going for the positive feedback mechanism. Are you getting this? Okay? So this is the positive feedback. One external positive feedback will also happen by the estrogen. That will come later, but this is happening in the follicular phase, okay, for the growth of the follicle. Okay. The size of the ovarian follicle is growing here, okay, and it is passing through different phases, and you can see when this kind of a structure develops. Okay, yeah. Actually, no, corona radicata is something else here. Those are the layers of streaks or the cells in special fashion. Here you have the granulosa cells and few layers of theca cells, okay. They are separated from the remaining cells here, and you can see the theca externa becomes kind of a connective tissue or a support, okay. Theca interna, these cells are there and few layers here, and granulosa cells are moujud here, and inside you have the growing oocyte, okay. This is the cavity of the follicle. This structure which is developed, a separate structure which is there, which is suspended in the antral fluid, it has a special name, and you call it cumulus oophorus. Cumulus oophorus, because it has gathered few layers of the cells, okay. That structure is just attached like a fruit, and around that you have the follicle. When there is ovulation, is the ovum going alone without cells, or it is going along with the cumulus oophorus? What do you see? Oh, cumulus oophorus is the support. It is the endocrine support, it is the nutritional support, it is the protection, it is a covering for the ovum, because now ovum after ovulation has to pass into the fallopian tubes and it has to go into the uterus, isn't it? So it is covered by a few layers of cells, and these cells are giving a special name. You call it cumulus oophorus. Oophorus means from oocyte, and cumulus means accumulating around, gathering around, okay. So this is cumulus oophorus, and here you have the cumulus oophorus along with the oocyte here, okay. Shabab, going back to the meiotic division, do you remember that? All right, okay. Meiotic division, what do you think? Here, what is the status? Prophase. Here, what do you think? Prophase. Okay, here. Guess, just guess, okay, because maybe you don't know that. We are just guessing, okay? Yeah, here. Some point just before ovulation, okay, prophase is moujud till here. Just before ovulation, all of a sudden, prophase restarts and quickly goes into all the phases, and first meiotic division finishes. So just before ovulation, okay, maybe few hours before ovulation or a little time before ovulation, you complete the first meiotic division. Not complete meiosis, meiosis awwal, the first meiotic division, okay. So at the time of ovulation, the first meiotic division is finished, okay. And the second meiotic division, now it goes into the uterus, and maybe it will die, or maybe the sperms can fertilize it. There are different possibilities. It depends on the situation, okay, whether the female is sexually active or not, whether there is a chance of fertilization or not. It depends on many things really, okay. If she's an unmarried girl, a regular cycle is going on, then nothing will happen. This will have to die. Every month the ovulation happens and they die. But first meiotic division is finished, and it is in the second meiotic division has started, okay. The second meiotic division, now the question, sawal comes in mind, okay, second meiotic division, when does the second meiotic division finishes? After fertilization, okay. when the sperm enters into the ovum and fertilization happens, only then the second meiotic division finishes. So in a normal unmarried woman or a girl, when she's having a normal ovulation, what is the status of the released ovum? Will it ever pass into complete meiosis? Yes or no? No, it will not. If she is a married woman or if she is a sexually active woman and there is a chance of fertilization which is happening, only then second meiotic division is completed. All right? So, yeah.
Will the meiotic development of the ovulation of the ovum will be stopped before ovulation, between the time of ovulation and fertilization?
Yeah. This, because you know, when the ovum passes into the uterus, all right, it has started the meiosis 2, but meiosis 2 also has different phases. These phases are never completed before the fertilization. If the fertilization is not there, these phases will not go finally, and before that there is moth of the ovum in few days. Okay, so it dies simply. Yeah.
Can you repeat phase 1?
Yeah. The phase 1, prophase, here the first meiotic division finishes just before ovulation, yani somewhere at this time. Okay. At the time of ovulation, when the ovulation happens, now the first meiotic division is khalas, it's finished already. Now the ovum is in which division? Second meiotic division has started, the first is finished, and it will go on. Now it depends on the situation really. All right? Okay.
Doctor,
Yeah.
the follicle will start secreting estrogen at the antral phase?
No, before antral phase, but a little amount. Okay, a very little amount is there, estrogen secretion. But the true estrogen secretion significantly happens in the antral phase, because now there is a fluid and there is accumulation of secretion. Okay, and there is more expression of the FSH receptors and more production of the estrogen at that time, truly antral. But long before the antral stage, estrogen is there. Okay, yes dear?
Then result the positive feedback. Then result.
The positive feedback is helping you in the ovulation process, because this positive feedback is giving you two results. Number one, increasing the FSH and estrogen friendship and growing of the follicle, division of the cells, more estrogen secretion, and also new development of LH receptors. And LH receptors will help in the ovulation, isn't it? So this is the result of the positive feedback, two results. Yeah? Until ovulation happens, okay?
The ovulation is occurred.
Yeah.
So what will happen after that?
After that, there is no positive feedback, okay? And we don't think about this positive feedback. That was up to the time of ovulation. Still, estrogen will be secreted, because some of the FSH receptors will remain there after ovulation also, and they are normally stimulated by, but there is no positive feedback cycle which is going normally, okay? After that, there will be a negative relationship established between the follicle and the hypothalamus pituitary after that time, ovulation. We'll see the graph also, okay? I'll go to the graph also. Okay. All right. This is the diagram. You can see the cumulus oophorus cells, the same antrum, big cavity, and the follicle wall. Histological diagram, okay? This is all for your reading, okay? Now, we are coming to a very specific event, Shabab. The follicle is matured, Graafian follicle is ready, the pressure is increasing, the fluid is voluminous inside, okay? And like you are filling it with the tight fluid and it is expanding and expanding, and it has to rupture sometime. But what is the cause of that rupture exactly? Is it the pressure only inside, mechanical pressure, or something else? Let us see. Well, the rupture and release is known as ovulation. Ovulation is a momentary process, please. Now look at the process. For ovulation, you need few things. Some of the systemic hormones or the systemic factors are required, and some local factors are required for the ovulation, okay? The starting point is the luteinizing hormone. Luteinizing hormone is secreted from few days before the cycle, LH levels are significant and the response of the LH starts really. Okay, when you see the graph, you will realize. Now, what is LH doing? LH is coming from pituitary and it is now acting on the follicular cells, theca and granulosa cells. Why it is acting? Now because receptors are present. A good number of receptors is there. Okay. This is now, LH is now producing its own local hormone. Awal it was estrogen which is coming due to